You're listening to the Ask Drone U podcast. You ask, we answer your drone questions. Whether you're here to turn your passion into profit or you simply fly for fun, we're a community of learners and teachers who aspire to achieve greatness. We are
Drone U.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ask Drone U. We got a head spinner for you today. As always, my name is Paul.
My name's Rob. Super excited to be here with you, as always, and very much appreciative that you're here with us.
Yes, definitely appreciative as always. Just want to say a quick shout out to Pix4D. That Cyber Monday deal they had on software, man, that was a deal, and I think a lot of people appreciate that. So anyway, let's get right into today's question, which is all about agriculture, and someone in Portugal trying to solve a problem. I do, Rob, feel a little bit of connection and relevancy to this caller.
How so?
Because I have a Portuguese water dog.
Oh!
Oh, that got teed up perfectly.
Yes, it did. Kona, we would love to go see your motherland. I want to go there really badly.
Well, anyway, let's get into that question.
Hello, my name is Vasco. I am planning to start a business over in Portugal. And my question for you is if you guys know some software that you could recommend to process some agricultural photos. We have rice plantations that have various infestations with 4 different types of plants. And I was wondering if the software, or if you know any software that can differentiate between the rice and some of these plants which are very similar to the rice itself. The 4 different species are Echinocloa cruzgali, Cyprus maritimus, Cyprus difformis, Pteranthera remiformis, Alismas planta aquatica. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your help.
Thank you. That might be the most detailed question we've ever had in terms of actually naming the plants. Wow. Yeah, Paul, this is all you. AskDroneU.com, by the way, is where he asked his question, because we know that a lot of you out there have questions as well. So please get them in. We'd love to hear from you. But man, what do you? I got nothing.
Well, I mean, without having the empirical experience, which I just want to preface the show by saying that we're going to kind of run through some systems that we know that may help the caller, but without having tried it ourselves. I kind of always warn, hey, I haven't actually done this, but if I were to try it, here's kind of how I would go about doing it. And so first things first, we know that plants and materials as a whole absorb and reflect various bands of light, okay? And until we have hyperspectral cameras on drones, it may be quite difficult to be able to isolate any specific plant from another one, aka the whole needle in a haystack idea, right?
Yeah.
Let's say Rob's wife, Jana, let's go lower than that. Let's say Jake's new wife drops her beautiful turquoise ring near the surface of a haystack, okay? To our eyes, probably hard to find. But in the eyes of a hyperspectral sensor, we can set up the sensor to look just for turquoise based off of the light it reflects and the light it absorbs. So essentially everything in the image will be blacked out except for that one piece of turquoise, okay? Unfortunately, we don't have that capacity with most drones today unless you are in the military field. So that said...
Or have 50 grand?
I would say 1 million.
Oh.
Those sensors have to be water cooled. So you're looking at a big bird to carry that heavy payload. So,
wow, okay.
But that said, let's imagine that this may be possible with a multi-spectral sensor. So I'm going to go through 2 scenarios. Scenario number 1 is that you just are using whatever mapping drone that you normally use for ag. Let's just say it's a digital camera though. The EB, the Wingtra, again, just a regular digital camera, no special bands of light. First thing is first, if there's a color deviation between these plants, maybe you could tell the difference in doing a map. Now, the things to note, though, is that as a passive sensor, meaning we're not shooting anything at these plants, our capacity to interpret the map will only be as good as the images that we take, meaning we might have to fly lower to actually identify any deviations of plant species, okay? So that's number one. I kind of wanted to lay that foundation before we went into multispectral. So let's say that he's got an EB or a Wingtra and the Red Edge XM camera, right? Multi-spectral camera, all global shutters. We can notate various bands of light, RGB, near infrared. I forget what the RGB near. I'm missing two. Anyway, long story short is flying again on the assumption that we're flying low enough to be able to see the deviations in plant species. Would the different plants show up differently in a multispectral sensor? Meaning, and the way to test it was he could just essentially fly his Red Edge camera, his multispectral camera at say 10 or 20 feet, where he knows that there are rice and these different species of invasive plants. And if he can take that photo and just process just a couple of photos in say Pix4D fields, if they do show up as different objects or as different colors, then the answer would be yes, you could differentiate between those different species of plants. But in all honesty, I honestly do not know if the software is going to be able to deviate between the different plant species, okay? In my eyes, it's going to be dependent on two things. Number one is going to be the type of camera that we use. Number two is going to be the altitude that we fly. And number three is going to be the processing options for the software and how we actually run the maps. Because oftentimes a lot of ag stuff is just a simple NDVI map created from multispectral imagery. That is not going to showcase a deviation in plant species. Okay, so what do you got?
No, I'm just looking at, and yeah, clearly that's all. It's not going to be any different.
Exactly.
I mean, you can see.
So I think without like a hyperspectral camera, it may be very difficult to differentiate between the different plant species. But with these guys doing exactly what they're trying to do, I would say, you know what? I think you need to run some tests. Just take images with your multispectral sensor. Can you see differences in the bands of light between those different plant species? Because if you can, then there's probably a high propensity that you could actually use something like Pix4D fields to produce the maps that you're looking for to identify those invasive species. But until we get more advanced camera payloads that are small enough to fly on drones, this might be one of those things that might be difficult. And I could also be wrong. I mean, again, I don't have practical experience with this. So
what about deploying something like locate? Now, I know in order for that, we come back to there's going to have to be some color variations, but would something like that work?
So let's assume that there are color deviations between the different plant species. To answer your question, I would not personally use locate. I would use Pictera. I think it's a far superior product. And because I can train Pictera with deep learning to essentially eliminate false positives, it's a much more viable product for my business.
Okay. And I wonder, and so that's fine, but it's the same concept.
Yes. They're both built off of MATLAB. So yeah. How
big of a difference or how big of a variation in color would there need to be for Pictera to be effective in telling you there's a different plant?
That's a very good question.
Don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder.
But hold on, you bring up something important I talked about in pre-show, but we didn't talk about yet on this show, which is all those tests I said that to run, with the multispectral camera, seeing if it's different bands of light, seeing if there's color deviation. I would do it on a bright sunny day, and I would also do it on an overcast day because there's a huge difference in map quality on an overcast day. And when you have that flat light, it will be a lot easier to discern the differences in color.
Interesting.
And so I'm like, so as you test that, test it in bright light and also test it in overcast weather. Your results may vary.
Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, it would be fun to test and to give all this a shot. Add it to the repertoire of things that need to be done.
Let's bring on some more members, scale Drone U, and I would love to spend 2 days a week of just trying these kind of edge outlier use cases of drones, because the more and more I learn, the more and more I learn what's possible.
Well, and some of them I don't know that we could even categorize them as edge anymore, because I know, kind of seeing all the conversations within our community and so forth, and just receiving the feedback and discussions from members and non-members alike, there's more and more people talking about ag and asking about ag. So anyways, very interesting.
Yeah. Very, very interesting indeed. I also know, because we have some students down in Arkansas who have rice paddies. And I remember the biggest issue with them was actually getting accuracy on the topos and the elevations, because they're essentially using up so much water that the water table is depleting and the earth is captating literally on their fields. So meaning their fields are sinking. Literally. And I mean, you remember that guy? Well, I think his name was Rob as well. And I remember that he was working with Wingtra to be able to get that high level PPK accuracy to be able to,
Are you thinking about Paul?
No, I thought his name was Rob.
Really?
I can see his face right now. One of my favorite students. But
Interesting.
Yeah, no.
Huh. Okay. Anyways, that's very interesting. I had no idea.
But, that all said, there are a lot of applications when it comes to agriculture. And sometimes it's going to be test and see if it works. But also you're going to have to act like a scientist, eliminate variables and try different things to see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much what we did to be able to even teach Pix4D about some of the things that we learned in complex 3D modeling to essentially hack their software to make it work better. So
Scientific method is alive and well.
it sure is. It sure is. And I agree with you too about a lot of these things are not really edge applications anymore. We're seeing more and more and more of it. I wonder if Precision Hawk it offers a camera payload that would be able to distinguish those different plant species. I mean, there are drones out there that might work. Another one that I would recommend looking at, and no one ever talks about them, Yamaha. Yamaha had an agriculture drone the year I was born.
Huh. Interesting.
The R-Max. They called it the Max at the time, or I forget what, like R800 or something like that. But
I just like the YZ250. That's all I think
oh,
about.
well,
Can Drone U go in on a YZ?
if Drone U is willing to buy some more miners, I don't see why not. So anyway, but I mean, this is kind of the fun of being a drone pilot is truly discerning what works and what doesn't. And the fact that he's in a different country and not the United States, he has a major leg up, because the FAA, enforcement or not, is really not allowing for the exploration and innovation of agricultural based things when you have to get a Part 137 certificate to be able to get full utilization from your ag drone to be able to spray.
The irony in that is that in terms of a safe environment, it probably doesn't get any safer than that.
Well,
but anywho, I'm sure there's reasons.
And I know the enforcement level is near zero, but at the same time, I think it's important at some point, and this is an article I've wanted to write for a very long time, is at what point does enforcement inhibit or empower innovation? And as drone pilots, should we really be asking how important regulatory enforcement, how important it is? Because a lack of enforcement empowers innovation. And, every experienced drone pilot knows exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not going to spill the beans on the show, but that lack of enforcement can potentially provide for innovation that the U.S. needs to have in order to maintain our economic powerhouse of a society that we have. If that makes sense?
Yeah, I hope it's not too late.
I don't think it's ever too late. So
good.
There's a whole lot that you can do in the backwoods with no one watching. Just kidding. But anyway, on that note, that's going to do it.
So we've heard.
Yeah, that's going to do it for us today. Don't take that and run with it, okay? It was just a joke.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, we might have just opened
Back
up
to that whole mean people suck comment section.
And on that note, we're going to end the show. So I hope this helps you guys. Let me know if it does or not. I would love to hear feedback. If other people have, hey, you know what? Someone chimed in actually and talking about all the emails I have yet to respond to. There was a guy who said he had ag knowledge from California. Maybe this would be a good one for him. So
Yeah.
anyway, thank you again for joining us. If you have a question, ask Drone U, but that's going to do it for us today. My name is Paul.
I'm Rob.
This is Ask Drone U.